looking funny.
Sorry?
Sorry, my collar keeps looking funny and it started bothering me.
Ah, yeah, you have to.
I'm like, it's like, oh man, it feels like it's too high on one side, too low on the other. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit on the.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm gonna give in.
Okay, good. So since when have you been practicing mob programming? In what contexts? What complexity projects?
Yeah. So a few different ways. One, of course, for actually doing work for, it's probably been about, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe even longer, at least 5 years, probably more than 6.
Mm-hmm.
I originally got introduced to it by Woody,
Yeah.
of course, and I had been doing pair programming and working in 2s and 3s, but I didn't have a name for it, and we didn't do it quite as intentionally, right? We just pulled together when we had something we needed to do, and kind of whoever was running the keyboard, and we would bounce around and, kind of like pair programming. I've been doing pair programming since probably 97 or 98.
Okay.
I'll let
Since
you
the
do the
inception,
math.
probably.
Yeah, so yeah, we read about it on Usenet as the XP team was describing their crazy way of working. I think it was Kent, Ron, and is it John? Anyway, a couple of them were on Usenet and they were posting, and everybody threw a fit because, of course, it was a radical idea and everybody hated it. And pair programming, nobody's ever going to do that. And testing before you write the code, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. And so we did it because we thought it was fun. And it worked. So then going from pairing to mobbing was actually pretty natural and a lot nicer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I suppose projects have ranged from simple to complicated to complex in terms of applying it.
Oh yeah, and team sizes changed.
Okay.
And so probably smallest group we've ever had doing it, probably about 3. Of course, it's as small as you can get before you're just pairing.
Yeah.
And have tried it with groups as high as 20.
Wow.
But there's a special case for that, right? It was in training. So we realized that you learn much faster when you're in an ensemble situation. By the way, ensemble was Linda and Marit came up with that term because mobbing has taken on a negative connotation.
Okay. So it's just a synonym.
Yeah. So mobbing is in some cultures, mobbing is bullying people to the point of getting them to quit or have a nervous breakdown.
Okay, yeah.
I thought that's a terrible term. So it's just like everything else. They steal our good words and they make them bad words. So working in ensembles is a fast way to learn. So people gather up and they share insight and they share all of their productive tricks and suggestions, and you learn so fast. So in classroom situations, we've been doing it for probably about 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to doing it, for real and for money.
Okay, and in the classroom, I suppose you give the ensemble a problem, like to develop some application or to try or to solve some kata, and then let them all mob together.
Yes, and that's one of the ways we do that. And we find that you get to a certain size, it gets a lot harder to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because people who are new to it, they focus on the time they're at the keyboard, which is the wrong thing to focus on. When you're at the keyboard is when you're not programming.
Yeah.
Everybody who's programming, except the one at the keyboard. But people are like, well, I'm not going to be typing for the next hour and a half, so I don't really have to pay attention, and I can go do something else, and I'll just catch up at the last minute.
Okay.
So really large groups, you get people wandering off. Mm-hmm. So the only way that we found to counter that in a large group was to rotate a lot more often.
Okay.
So like
every minute.
Yeah, like every 2 minutes or something. So they kind of have to stay on their toes. Reality, it should be the other way around, but it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Reality is never what we intend it to be, and it's not the thing that makes sense to us. It's if the world worked the way we expected it to, we wouldn't be sure it was real. Our only certainty that we're not inventing all of this is that it keeps going against our intuition.
Yeah, I agree. And can you give an example of a project that was developed, like for real world project, not classroom situation, that was interesting? How did that work out? How did mobbing help?
So, of course, we protect our clients' names, but one of the companies I worked for, they had been going for 6 or 8 months and they hadn't released anything.
Okay.
And the work was divided among people, and people were reporting tickets being closed and turned around and percentages done, but the system had never been integrated.
Okay.
And their lead developer had his own office in a different space away
Wow.
from the bullpen that everybody else was sitting in. There's a room where they all sat around the edges with their backs to each other and worked. And when we got involved, it was not really a rescue. It was more like, hey, these are pretty good folks. See if you can make them even better. See what we can do to help. And when we got in, we realized that they had very siloed knowledge.
Okay.
So we set up a big screen. Everybody turned to face. It was a complicated distributed system. And basically, it's a very, very remote control of an industrial process.
Mm-hmm.
So think about people sitting in, let me pick different cities just for safety. Somebody sitting in Edinburgh and running a process somewhere in the middle of the North Sea.
Okay.
That's the kind of distances, maybe in Norway.
Yeah.
So, it's a very remote process, industrial control.
Okay.
So when we got there, it had never been integrated or released. So we pulled together in a mob, and our excuse for having people in an ensemble was that everybody knew different pieces, but we have to integrate them and make it run.
Mm-hmm.
Which at first, the lead and some other people were like, I just don't want to do that. I just want to work on my part. And when they finally took it out and tried to run it, the people who didn't work with the group, their parts didn't integrate correctly.
Okay.
And it cost a lot of money, their failure. It's very expensive. Well, after that, they were like, okay, I'll help with the group. And they joined in and got everything integrated, and it ran and things went well, and it became a successful product so far. It continues to be developed, and they continue to work on it in groups.
Okay, so basically that was the, let's say, how you saw it to people. Basically, you got to the pain point, basically the integration, which requires lots of collaboration, and people who didn't want to do that, they were just peer pressured by the rest because they didn't do as well as the ensemble.
Strangely enough, no, they were actually pushed into it by their own failure to integrate with the team.
So
the team never demanded it of them.
Okay.
And I did meet that same lead programmer several years later. He came to one of my classes. I was surprised. And introduced himself. And oh yeah, I remember. And he said, yeah, he says, after you left, he says, I realized that you guys had been right all along. What I was doing was not the best way to get this done. And I'm like, well, we all learn, it's cool. But
Okay.
they never had any peer pressure on him.
Okay.
He was the senior and he wanted to do it, and then it didn't work. And so he had to deal with that on his own, sort of.
Okay. And do they still practice mobbing?
Yes. In fact, it went so well that the company now has us, Industrial Logic, where I work. We come in and we do training for all of their new hires now.
Okay.
And one of the first things we do is we pull them all into a group, and we let them self-organize into mini mobs according to the work. Mm-hmm. And we give them projects to do, and they do it, 4 to 8 hours a day.
Okay. And I suppose that the company has to hire people that are open to working with others, and not individual developer who does stuff on their own and so on. I suppose that's important for the mob to
You
work.
know, I don't know that they're pre-screening, because this is my third or fourth time we've done this training, and a lot of people had never heard of this way of working together when they come into the class. And I don't tell them we're going to be doing mob programming, you're going to have to work with other people. We just start working that way.
Okay.
So I usually, we're several days in before they find out there's a name for it.
Okay, that's quite interesting, because most of the people I've interviewed on the topic stress that it's important to hire people who want to work with others, who are open to pairing, to mobbing, and so on. But that's a different perspective. So that's good.
There's one of the people I worked with, colleague when I was with Object Mentor. His name is Bob Koss. He's great, by the way, just tremendous. I don't know if he's still coaching and training. He's probably told us all to saw it off. But but Bob Koss always said that he hated pair programming.
Okay. He
never did like it. He never did like any of it. But it made the code so much better that it was silly not to do it. So he always did, and he always taught it. And it turns out you don't have to like it for it to work.
Okay, that's quite interesting. And how much time it usually takes for like even subjective improvements to be seen in an organization that adopts mobbing? Do you have something?
So that's always a good one, because a lot of times people are like, well, we should do mobbing because that's what good people and professionals do. I don't know that you're ever going to see anything much out of that kind of an approach. We do it in training because you learn faster, and we see it the first day, right? When we have teams that are not integrating and they join together to integrate, we see that in the first couple of days. When we have a team that's taking on a new challenge, perhaps in a new language, perhaps in a new domain, you see the rapid improvement right away. Those are all learning challenges. And of course, we always have learning challenge, but there's probably one more important than that and more significant than that people overlook. Because in typical work, you'll see this we call it scatter gather work. About this, where you have the leads, the tech giants, they're in the company. They take a problem, they work out the whole solution, they slice it into pieces and assign it to individuals, and the individuals have, a list of things to do, and they all try to complete their work and integrate it at the end. But when they do the work, of course, each person has about 40% of the skills needed to go from idea to production. They don't all know the pipeline. They don't know the front end and the back end. They don't know the database that intimately. They don't know all the processes that interface. So maybe 4/10 of the languages and technical skills they need, and maybe 1/10 of the system knowledge. There are so many ways things can go wrong that they wouldn't see. And they're working alone with 1/10 the system knowledge and 40% of the technical skills. So of course, what's going to happen is they're going to write code that has problems.
Yeah,
it's inevitable. And the organization recognizes that this is inevitable. So when they write their code, it has to be reviewed, right? There's a pull request, and a senior has to review their code because it's probably going to be wrong in a couple different ways. And every time they find a problem, they send it back, and it goes back into a queue and it waits to be worked on, right? And then at some point, they send it on for testing, and the testers, again, they're working with 4/10 of the technical skills they need, and they have to wait for an environment to be built for testing, and they have to do all this work. And finally, they're going to find a bug, and it's going to go back to the developer. It's going to go back through PR, might be rejected again, finally come back to testing. So you get all these queues and loops, which basically means that we're going to start with a job that should take a month. Is it really going to take a month? Well, I can't say. It depends on how long it takes to get it reviewed, how long it takes to get into the QA queue, how many times it bounces around, how much other work people are doing, so that something in the queue has to wait for them to get around to it. It's impossible. There's no way to know. But let's say that you were going to eliminate the queues and loops. So you're going to review my code. I'm new to the company. You're a tech giant. Great, you're going to review my code. Well, rather than me write it wrong and then you correct it, how about we just sit down together and do it? And that way, when I've written it, it is the code you would have approved anyway. And along the way, you'll show me why.
Yeah.
And I will learn, right? Well, that's great. Well, what about the QA? I still have to hand it off to QA and wait 4 days for them to get around to it and 3 days to test it and then to reject it and then 5 more days. Well, that's crazy. Bring the QA person into our group. The 3 of us will work together. We'll do the tests and the code, and we'll do it to the specifications of our most senior technical members, and we'll have it tested out end to end. And then when we do a commit, it's ready to push. And when we do a push, probably just, go through the slow testing phase, whatever we have to smoke tests and things, and it'll deploy and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
So what we're actually doing is not burning the toast, then scraping it. What we're doing is watching the toast and popping it up when it's done.
Yeah.
Well, that almost every organization needs, but most organizations are so caught up with dividing people and dividing work and then catching all the mistakes that they're not getting anything done. And you find an organization with 2-week sprints, for instance, and you find out the coding task took 2 days, and when it's deployed, it has been in the system for over 250 days. And so the answer, of course, the programmers need to work faster.
Yeah, but no.
If they go faster, it'll save us 1 day if they could go twice as fast. Doesn't even count. What if they went slower and had fewer loops?
Yeah.
Well, we'd be done a lot faster. So the point of mob programming isn't just to learn faster, and certainly not just to be good craftsmen and professional developers. The point is to actually have things fully done sooner. And that's, I think, where people miss it. And people say, well, it doesn't feel faster. We've been doing mobbing and it just feels slow. We talk about things and only one person is typing. And it seems like it took like 3 days to get this code done. I probably could have written that code in 15 minutes. And so, would you have written that exact code? I think I could now. Well, now.
Yeah.
What would you have done? They're looking at just the period between I start typing and I stop typing, right?
Yeah.
I'll go one beyond that. Programming is about 11/12 thinking. By the way, my camera is really blurry, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the focuses from time to time.
It's crazy. So programming, we figure, is about 11/12 thinking. And the way we worked that out is we said, okay, what if you spent 6 hours, a good 6 hours program? Everybody has meetings, right?
Yeah.
So you spent your 6 hours programming and you committed all the work and it's ready to go. And then overnight, version control crashes and you've lost all your copies. Okay. Now you find out that you have a psychopathic colleague who just loves reading diffs. And he's got a little script that every time somebody commits the code and pushes it, it prints it out so he can read it on the train on the way home.
Okay.
And your colleague says, hey, no problem. I've got all the work you did yesterday. All you have to do is type it back in. So here's the diff. Go type it back in. How long would it take you to retype 6 hours worth of work?
A bit less, probably. But
most people say about half an hour.
Okay.
So just to code it in, just to type it back in without any thinking, improving, just to put it back, about a half an hour. That's an interesting thought. So the typing for a 6 hour day is about 20 to 40 minutes of work. So what were they doing the rest of the time? Were they taking breaks and joking around and wasting time intentionally? Well, no, they were doing all the learning. They were reading the code. They were seeing what works. They were trying things out that didn't work and then undoing them and trying something different. They were finding the system's knock-on side effects that, where they were breaking something down the way. They were correcting that. They were learning and studying and trying things. So, you get this much code. And so we thought, well, that's easy then. So I have a half an hour, 6 hours is 12 half hours.
Yeah.
So apparently 11/12 of the work is just thinking and learning.
Yeah.
So maybe when we're done every day, oh, I could have typed that a lot faster now that I know what it is. Sure, we could have deleted it and recreated it in a fraction of the time because we've already done the learning. And that's the thing that people miss. Well, if mob programming accelerates learning and eliminates cues, it's not surprising that Woody says that Hunter Industries, once they started mob programming, was about 10 times more productive.
Okay.
That's my spiel. There you go.
Yeah. Well, the paradoxical thing is that, well, I usually find when I talk to managers who aren't accustomed to mob programming is that they ask the question, well, how are we going to do all of the other tasks that have to be done? But because it's really hard to realize that by eliminating the cues, you have the time to do all of the tasks and more, but you do them, even though you do them one at a time. So I think that's the tipping point for managers.
And really, you never do all the tasks anyway. You always run out of time. So the nice thing about serializing them is you put all the most important ones first.
Mm-hmm.
So at least, this is what we call the best failure theory.
Yeah.
Time is going to run out. Likely, we will have more things to do after the time runs out. So the question is, how do we order them so we have the best possible failure? Right?
Yeah.
And the worst case scenario is that 100% of the work is 80% done.
Yeah.
We can't release anything. There's nothing to put out if 100% of the work is 80% done.
Yeah.
On the other hand, what if 80% of the work is 100% done?
Yeah. We have something. And
yeah, that's a qualified success.
Yeah.
Provided those were the right 80%.
Yeah.
What if it was the most important thing that didn't get done? Well, then we're in trouble. Right?
Exactly.
And those same managers, by the way, when you have a bunch of things in flight and something important is not getting done, what do? They're gonna pull everybody together in a war room, and they're gonna work on the one thing until it gets done. And they're gonna say, wow, that really worked. It's done, it's finished, it's ready to ship. Okay, let's stop doing it this way.
Yeah. Back to normal.
Yeah, that worked, so let's stop.
Yeah. It's no, if you think about it, I think there was the same resistance against the Toyota production system and clean manufacturing, because for me it's basically the same idea, but in manufacturing. But now everyone does it. I've talked a while ago with like a real engineer in a production factory in I think in Holland, and he told me that you can't find a factory that doesn't do lean manufacturing because it's better. So,
saves money, makes improvements sooner. Less waste.
But manufacturing is several hundred years old, and probably software engineering needs to catch up with that.
Yeah, I know. It's a relatively young industry. It's less than 100 years.
Yeah.
Let's see. Probably only like 80 years, 70, 80 years old.
Well, since the 40s or the 50s.
Yeah. So when did we actually start programming?
Well, maybe around the space race were the most.
Oh, it had already been going on by then. So probably, let's see. So the guy who taught me in 1979 had been programming 20 years.
Okay.
So
since
the 60s, 50s, somewhere in the 50s, I guess.
Yeah.
40s or 50s.
Yeah.
So it's still very young. I mean, Industrial Revolution was when? Gosh, hold on. I got to look this up now.
The late 19th century, probably.
Yeah. And of course, it happened here in the UK a lot earlier than it happened in the US. 1820.
1820. Okay. So yeah,
Oh,
that's
no, it says start date 1760. Really?
almost
Oh,
300 years. So
yeah, it transitioned to Europe and the United States around from 1760 to around 1820. So I was counting the wrong end of it. So there's the Industrial Revolution, 1760.
yeah, yeah. And it's actually Toyota came up with lean manufacturing around the 80s, I think, the last century. So it took a while.
Yeah, yeah. And there's still things to be learned there. Apparently, some people leaned out their supply chain a little more than they had to.
Yeah, yeah. The small buffers, and you're out in adverse situations. Like
Yeah. Oh, and for us, we recently had the COVID
yeah,
crisis. So we had the pandemic comes along. Everybody was like, "Oh, this is great. We can all get together and work in one room, or we can all work together in the office, and people are close by, and you can ask questions. It'll be great." And people said, "Well, we like to work remotely." Oh, that will never work, right? And
yeah,
open source has been doing it for years and years and years, decades. Yeah, but that won't work for commercial work. We need people to be in the office. COVID. Oh no, we're going to have to work remotely. Do you think you can be able to do that?
yeah, yeah.
And of course, all the concerns that if everybody's at home, nobody's going to work. And then they find out that at home, everybody's become a workaholic. And they've actually had to limit their access to try to get them to, like eat a meal and tend to their family and not be up at 3 a.m. Although some organizations encourage that, to be fair.
Yeah, and actually, how did you manage? How do you do mob programming in a remote setting?
So this is actually pretty nice. So almost everybody has now, a nice office and a good camera. And I'm in a flat in Edinburgh. We're temporarily here, but at home I have a really nice medium diaphragm microphone and all these things and extra screens and
Yeah,
the giant curved screen. So you can keep Teams or Zoom or whatever running, Skype, whatever you want to use, you can keep that running. You can get together with just the people who are working on the thing you're working on, just your own group, which is nice. So I've got a screen with 5 faces on it, and one of us is sharing their screen and driving the keyboard. Maybe they're using the same editor I'm using. I hope so. If not, then I'm going to learn a bit about theirs, and we're going to watch it work, and they may do things I didn't know you could do. So that's kind of nice. And then we've got Git, and Git is nice because we have remote repositories. So we get to the end of your 7 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever we're working with, and you're ready to program and stop typing. So you do a push and I do a pull, and now we're on my screen.
yeah,
And we find that in person, we kind of like 5 minute, 7 minute kind of rotations. When we're doing it this way, it's different because we never want to push unless everything's green, right? So you want to make sure we do TDD while mobbing, because otherwise it's not as much fun and it's not as good. We tend to do micro commits, right? So every time it's green, we commit, and then we do a refactoring and commit, and then we write a test and it's red, and then we make it pass and it's green and we commit, right? So we have a lot of opportunities when it's green that we can push. We might do passing the test on my machine and refactoring on your machine, and that's okay. But we do find that it's a longer period. We tend to go 15 minutes, 20, half an hour. I have a friend that I was programming with every day for an hour, and we would go the whole hour as, one driver today, another driver tomorrow.
Okay.
And, we deliberate on things together, but then one person is the typist.
Okay, so because you don't have that fast Like you can't just hand over the keyboard, and probably that necessitates longer cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, some of my friends are at Industrial Logic are using mob.sh, and
Yeah.
it's a, it's a nice little porcelain over Git, and it runs a timer and says, hey, time to switch. You type a shortcut command, and it's very, very thin. I mean, it's not stateful. It's not very smart. It's just very simple. And you say mob next, and it pushes it in. The next person gets it. They start, they do next, it goes on. But it's just going through and doing the same thing through Git, but it's using a branch, a temporary branch.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
And so why do you think mobbing without TDD isn't so fun?
So there is a safety element, right? So a safety is any mechanism that keeps a mistake from becoming a crisis.
Okay.
Right? So with TDD, especially with an auto tester, I like using, like, PyCharm has an auto test. You click it, and every time the code is compilable, it'll run the test. Yeah. It doesn't wait for you to save even, right? So as you're typing, it's like you're in the middle of a line. It knows that. It knows that you haven't finished. It couldn't possibly compile. You hit the end of the line, you hit enter, boop, there goes the test. Yeah. And you always know you're green or you're red. And when together we make a mistake that we didn't anticipate, you suddenly get a red bar. Yeah. Right. So it's like, wait, at that point, we can simply revert to go back to the last known good state and try again, or we could try to puzzle through. But if we don't have TDD, then we can get pretty far along before we realize we've made a mistake. But by then, we have so much work that we don't want to revert. We may have been working, for hours, and suddenly we find a problem that we didn't know we had. It's like, oh my gosh, we've got to go forward. Otherwise, we're going to lose everything. So the fear keeps us from having fun. It also keeps us from learning as fast, right? So knowing that 2 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, everything was fine. And if I throw away what I'm doing, it's no big deal. We could do it better. Yeah. Even allows me to say, okay, let's commit where we are. Let's do something stupid that might not work, just to see what happens and what the timings are. Is it faster that way? Is it slower that way? Oh, it's slower. Okay, revert. Let's keep going, right? Yeah. So the ability to experiment needs your experiments to be safe, and that requires you to have the tests and a commit point that you can count on. Think about like a ratchet. The ratchet, it turns one direction, but then it just slips. It never slips far back. If you're looking like you're raising a portcullis in an old castle, right? They tick, 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 and you rest. And you grab it and you go tick, 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 and it never falls back more than an inch or so. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's the same idea for coding. You're always moving forward. You never fall back very much. You never lose 2 hours to a debugging session, or 4 or 2 days. And that keeps it safe and fun. And also then in the mob, other people are saying, shouldn't we have committed here? Yes, we should. It's like, don't we have a test for that? I don't think we do. I'm not sure how to write one. I know how to write one. How about we do this? Yeah. Right? Yeah. So it's easy to maintain all of the habits and disciplines of coding well in a mob if you have TDD. But I would not want to be in a place where, we are 3 hours into your 6-hour idea and we've just hit a problem and we're not sure why. Yeah. Just too much to lose. Yeah, or just testing it manually and then write the tests after the fact just because you want to have tests. Really, that's the worst one, because as far as we're concerned, it already works. So writing any tests afterwards is kind of bureaucratic silliness. Yeah. We're doing that because they said we have to. Well, we're not really enjoying that, and we could move on to something else. I mean, we got this one working. Yeah. Why are we wasting our time on this? And you got 8 people, in a room feeling like we're wasting our time on something. And it's, it's not paying us. We're not going to deliver it. Why does it have to be that good? And we don't use it anyway, right? We're testing after we've written our whole change. It's
Yeah.
not going to give us, it's not going to support refactoring. It's not going to tell us when we made a mistake.
Yeah.
What's the point really?
And regarding refactoring, when you approach a given problem with mobbing and TDD, do you actually need to think first about some higher level architecture, for example, how you're going to structure things from a domain-driven design point, or are you going to use does this solution need something like hexagonal architecture, clean architecture, and so on, or you just let the mob and the TDD cycle drive the design entirely?
Yeah. Yes, both.
Both. Okay. So
So, yeah, well, you kind of know where you want to go. But there's an element to it that, the tests are to lock down some invariants. Whatever happens, if I give you a 1 and a 2, I need to get back a 3.
yeah.
Whatever else is true, however it's designed, however deep it goes, that part needs to happen. And we probably have in mind that we're going to build a microservice around it at this point, and that's okay. So we start with it and we get it to work. So it returns a 3. Well, I don't like the way it returns a 3. I would rather it not return a constant 3. I would rather it return the sum of the 1 and the 2.
Okay.
Well, let's make it pass the right way. So it works. Now it works better. Yes, but I'd like it to not return the 3 directly from here. I'd actually like it to have this other function that returns the 3, and I'd like it to be async. Well, okay, let's move it that way. Okay, it still gets a 3. It still passes, Well, what else? Well, when I give it a 0, it should give me back a 1. Okay, well, if 0, then return 1. Okay, now I hate the way it gives me a 1. That's incorporated correctly into the system, right? So once it's working and all the other tests are passing, then we can deal with continuing to evolve the design and the architecture. And we're probably going to grow it in the direction we want to grow it.
Okay.
It rarely will surprise us.
Okay, good. And from your experience, have you seen anything that has become worse because of mobbing?
In the technical realm, no. I've seen people who don't want to do it and who do not like their colleagues, and they resent being in close contact and communication with people they hate. And often that hate is undeserved, and sometimes it's deserved. You'll find people who feel like they don't have colleagues, they only have rivals.
Okay.
If I'm being stack ranked against you, why should I help you by helping you learn things?
Okay.
And then I resent the fact that you're learning, because that actually makes it more likely that I'm going to shuffle near the bottom, sort to the bottom of the deck.
Yeah.
I want to be on the top of the deck. I got to be the leader, and so I need to hoard my knowledge in order to hold my position. And I just hate this, and sometimes they will intentionally sabotage all the mobbing so that it'll stop, so they'll be able to maintain their position and their dominance.
Okay.
That can get worse, right? I mean, you can kind of fake it if you don't actually have to talk to each other.
Yeah.
But when you're co-responsible for something, and you just can't throw the other person under the bus, well, you should fire them. They're stupid. Now you're responsible to your team and for your team. It's a different situation. And it's like, well, why should I have to work with these losers? They slow me down.
Yeah. And
so the social can go wrong.
Yeah. And but isn't that the problem only if the management doesn't handle it adequately? Because I mean, if you surface such a critical problem because of mobbing, then it becomes a matter of either handling it or ignoring it. And if you handle it, you actually make things far better. Yes,
absolutely. And of course, part of that is, how do the managers feel about this? Do the managers like having rivalry and stack ranking and a bit of a Shark Tank? You know, do the managers believe that's the kind of competition that makes everybody better?
Mm-hmm.
You know, do they promote that idea? Do they remind people that, hey, listen, you're the top of the stack right now. If we had to let somebody go, it would be those three. Do they feed that? Do they feel like they're getting advantage from it? Because some managers love a Shark Tank.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and so if you're stack ranking your people and you're expecting them to mob, something's going to break. You're either not going to be able to stack rank them anymore because you can't separate the work of the individual from the work of the group, or you're not going to be able to mob them together. You're not going to be able to make an ensemble of them.
Yeah, yeah. Agree. Okay, so I have some more topics, but
Okay.
just let me know if you have the time because it's almost 45.
We can go another 10 minutes.
Okay, okay. So uh and do you do mobbing only with engineers, or you also include business people in sessions? How that happen?
CFO came and mobbed with us. I like that. I like it when the C-levels come in. Of
Okay.
course, the product people, product managers, project managers, designers, UI
Mm-hmm.
designers are particularly fun to work with. I've done mobbing on spreadsheets with management. I
Okay.
do pair and mob article writing
Okay.
and book writing. Um, so yeah, a lot of times it's not technical people, but technical is a, you know,
Yeah.
what's a work that doesn't have techniques, right?
Yeah.
Writing is extremely technical. You got all the language and grammar and the idea of communicating things well. It's a highly technical field. It just happens to be in the realm of English language most of the time.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's quite interesting. And do you do retrospectives during the mobbing sessions, and how? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, usually daily. We usually do, you know, if we don't stop and just give appreciations on the fly, then it's often at the end of the day, we're like, well, what did we learn today? So I like keeping something called the TIL. I have it today I learned. I have
Okay.
a document I've been maintaining now for years where I keep dropping things in and keep forgetting to drop things in. I can look them up again after I've learned them.
Okay.
And our teams do that. We also tend to keep something called a promise debt.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that, you know, I'm in the middle of doing this thing, but we've noticed this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a side quest, you know,
Yeah.
but if I do the side quest, I don't know that I'm going to, then I've lost focus on what I'm doing right now. And programming, Michael Feathers tells us, is about doing one thing at a time.
Yes.
So on the promise debt, hey, we noticed this, we want to address it. Put it on the board, we've written it down, it's there.
Okay.
We don't really feel we're done until we've done this, we promised ourselves we're going to do it. We owe it to ourselves to do it. And
Okay.
so we continue on the current quest. We finish the current quest. We look at the code. We look at the board. We really wanted to go and fix this test because it's wrong. And we wanted to go clean up this data situation and add these new elements. Let's go do that. Now we're really done. Now, you
Yeah.
know, our hearts are clear.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's cool. And do you stick to some like special retrospective format, or you just do the basic things like what worked well and so on? How did we?
Sometimes we just chat.
Yeah.
But I don't, I'm not a big formality person for those. So we can do the spider web or the love, lack, long for. We can do, you know, sailboats and airplanes are really just, it's just Levine's force field analysis, right?
Yeah.
So we'll do that sometimes. But a lot of times we just like, you know, okay, you know, what did we like? What went well today? What's our advantage? You know, did we pick up today? And then what do we wish had been smoother? And then we just go from there. And usually, you know, if we're in flow and we come up with this, you know what? I just don't like the way this conversation is going. Let's try this one instead. Okay, fine. Let's try that. You know, and then it just goes up on today I learned.
Okay. Good. And how do you find it compared to pairing?
So this is really great. One of the people I talked to invented this, and I thought it was the greatest description. They said that pairing's too intense, that if pairing is like going on a date,
Okay.
mob programming is more like going to a party with your friends.
Okay.
The social pressure is far less with mob programming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, pair programming is you're focused on tech, you're getting things done. So it feels wrong to describe it as intimate,
Yeah.
because it's not intimate that way, you know. It's certainly not romantic or sexual. Boy, is it not. But it is two people, you know, that are really focused together on something, and it tends to be harder for people because they feel like they're being assessed.
Okay.
And if you're the senior, then you feel like you really do need to look like you know what you're doing, and have people's respect, you know, and it's one-on-one. And if you're the junior, you really feel like you need to defer, and you really need to probe. And if you're kind of rivals, then you kind of feel the one-upsmanship. Well, when you get into a group of 4 or 5 people and somebody starts trying to act omniscient, somebody's going to call them on it, you know. And if somebody starts to push someone down, somebody's going to stand up for them. You know, you tend to be,
Yeah.
you know, it's more egalitarian, I suppose. And also, you're talking to 5 people. You're not trying to relate closely with one and share your ideas with just one person. You're throwing ideas into a pool.
Yeah.
You know, it's a different feeling. I like pair programming. I find it to be a good avenue for mentorship, where, you know, if you and I wanted to really merge all of our ideas about how software is built, if we were to pair coach or pair teach or pair program, we would get a nice blending, you know, and we would have probably more time to think through things that way. But I would really know your ideas. Right? And in a mob, we have our ideas.
Yeah.
And it's a different, you know, you can feel the difference in that.
Yeah. Okay. So that was all from me. If you have some concluding thought to share, please do. Otherwise, we can finish here.
I think that that pretty well covers. There's I put up a couple of articles. You go to blogindustriallogic.com.
Okay.
And there's a couple of those where I've tried to help take these ideas and get them, you know, more accessible for people. One of them is managing programmer productivity, which is a clickbait title, and you could tell. Another one is called Scatter Gather, and another one is called Faster and More Predictable.
Okay.
And I think that those maybe are better because they have graphics. There's images and illustrations in multiple colors. And of course, you sort of like when you're programming, you know, it's all about the refactoring. When you write, you can look at your ideas and rewrite them and get feedback and rework them again. And the articles get a lot of review at Industrial Logic. So they were the best expression of the ideas we had at the time.
Okay, good. I'll definitely go through them. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity. And I hope you are very successful in your studies.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the willingness to share, and see you whenever.
All right.
Have a nice day. Bye.